Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a woman to society.
Then so shall you be. Hey, welcome back to A Menace to Society. I have the great honor today of speaking with Mildred Muhammad. Welcome to the podcast, Mildred.
Well, thank you for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. You are quite the survivor.
Absolutely. You have to be.
Yeah, you've kind of written the books, well, a bunch of books. You're actually a global keynote speaker. That sounds extremely important.
It is. I've been to other parts of the world to share my story on domestic violence, and actually I was supposed to go to China, but they denied my visa because of my work. So I was not able to get in there to help other women.
You are kidding me.
I am not.
That's horrible. Why would your work scare people in China that they wouldn't want to let you in?
Well, they just passed their domestic violence law, their first one in 2015, and it is not an area that they want to help to tackle, but domestic violence is a worldwide epidemic. It's not just exclusive to one country or one state or one city. It is everywhere. And until we can get a handle on this thing, it's going to continue to spread because it is not getting better. It is getting worse.
I totally agree with you. And I wonder what happened because we used to discuss domestic violence. Like it used to be topic of conversation on different talk shows. It seems like we used to have raising awareness campaigns, and now it seems like it's kind of vanished.
Well, domestic violence, domestic abuse is actually aimed at those in poverty. It is by design to be spoken of as a poverty issue. But domestic violence goes from the very rich to the very poor. And it is only when it becomes a national headline do you hear anything about it. But it's only for a few days. We talk about it. We blame the victim. We praise the abuser. Then it goes back up under the rug until something else happens on a national level, and the cycle continues. So it is our responsibility, every individual person, to try to put themselves in a position, not in harm's way, but in a position to help those whom you know that are victims of domestic violence, because it is such at epidemic proportions that every one of us knows someone who is or was a victim of domestic violence, be they male or female.
Yeah, men are victims too.
Yes, they are.
And little boys.
And it is time we start talking about that too, because we don't want to talk about that. We don't. We have to deal with every aspect of domestic violence. Men, women, and of course the silent victims are the children.
And I would think you know a lot about that because of your situation. For people who don't know, who are listening, Mildred was married to the DC sniper.
Right.
So you had to deal with
Muhammad.
Yes, yeah. You had to deal with, I would imagine, the grief of knowing that your husband is out there trying to kill you, and the devastation caused to your children by his actions.
Right, because he took them out of the country for 18 months, and although people knew where they were, they didn't tell me. When they did catch John, the community said that if I would have stayed with him, then he just would have killed me. If I would have stayed on the West Coast, then the people on the East Coast would still be alive. How dare I call me and my children victims when none of us were hurt or killed? And how dare I bring this drama into this quiet community?
It's your fault.
Victim blaming is always around when they are afraid to ask the abuser, why do you abuse? The narrative is always, why do you stay? The narrative is never, why do you abuse?
I don't think a lot of people understand, too. You can't just leave a super abusive person. It doesn't just happen like that.
No, you can't. Up to 75% of women who try to leave an abusive relationship are either hurt or killed. They are in fear of their children being killed or kidnapped, which they say you cannot kidnap your own children. But if your children are not old enough to understand that they are being taken against their will, that is kidnapping, be it a parent or not. But they don't want to call it that. They only call it custodial interference, which is a third-degree felony from what I understand, and they still don't do anything about it. They meaning law enforcement.
Well, it's Papa's right to do what he wants with his kids, pretty much, isn't it? I mean, that's
Correct.
that's what I'm finding
Yes,
out.
ma'am.
And we're thinking we
Yes,
live in
ma'am.
this.
Because victims have to dot every I and cross every T in order to get a level of justice. But the abuser can break the law on all degrees, and everything works in his favor.
Do you think that's a systemic court failure, or do you think that's a patriarchal failure, or is it a failure to recognize women
It's a
as
family
citizens?
court failure.
Family court?
Family court failure, because it just doesn't happen to those of us who don't have means. I mean, if you pay attention to the news, you see several celebrities are going through this same process of trying to get custody for their children. Some of them are taken out of the country and never seen again. I mean, this is a global issue, but it is not being recognized. Did you know that 58,000 children are taken away from good mothers and given over to abusive fathers, and it is documented in court records that they will abuse or molest their children, and the courts still give them over to that parent.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not talking about good parents who have decided to get a divorce and have emotionally balanced conversation and how to raise their children together. Not talking about the good parents. Not talking about it. We're only talking about the abusive fathers and mothers who choose to send their children through a traumatic experience in being with them or being with the other parent. Because I don't want it to be confused that we're talking about all parents and we talk about all mothers and all fathers. We're not. We're only talking in the realm of domestic abuse and violence.
Why do you think that's continuing to happen? Because I've spoken now with a few activists around the country who are working in family court reform. They're trying to bring awareness to the fact that almost 60,000 kids a year are placed with a father who will literally rape them, and the court knows it's going on, the cops know it's going on, the social workers know it's going on, but they accuse the mommy of lying.
Because they don't have the child's best interest at heart. Why that is, I don't know, other than it's a financial issue that we don't know about, a financial kickback, a financial gain for keeping children or mothers in a financial lock where you have to pay attorneys, you have to pay guardian ad litems, you have to pay the court system, you have to make all these payments. And eventually, it is going to be the mother that runs out of money.
Right.
And then the child goes over to the father by default.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the only benefit that I can think of, because when something goes wrong, the first thing they say is follow the money. Follow the money.
Do you ever think, because you are so very knowledgeable as a survivor, I mean, you've got book after book, you do travel the world speaking on these topics. Do you feel like, this is going to sound cynical perhaps, do you think that governments just don't want healthy people because then we won't buy products we don't need and buy debts we don't need, chasing after material goods, and we go and we drink too much, so we create all kinds of costs for the courts? I mean, what's going on? Why can't we fix any of this?
Because we don't want to. It's that simple. There are some areas in America that you cannot find resources for domestic violence in your state, in your city. You don't see PSAs. You don't hear commercials on the radio. You hear absolutely nothing. It's like a media silent on domestic violence, but you hear it on everything else. So they don't want to. It's too much money in it. Follow the money. Judges are getting paid. Attorneys are getting paid. Guardian ad litems are getting paid. Nonprofit organizations, they help you with prevention. They help you when you are a victim. When you are a survivor, there's nothing for you. Did you know that? That you can't go back and ask for help if you've been declared a survivor. You are literally on your own. There are limited, very few or no resources available to survivors of domestic violence. And then you ask, why does she stay? What incentive are you giving me, or what incentives are you going to help me with to keep me from going back once I've decided to leave?
Right.
Where are
Especially,
those programs?
right. Especially if you have children to consider, maybe especially young children who can't even go to school. You don't have anybody to take care of those kids.
Right. You have no resources. You don't want to take them out of the school system, but then you can't move to an apartment because what? Your credit score is low, or there's no affordable housing in the area. You got to move them to another location, and it's usually in a location that's not healthy. So what do? You stay.
And then you
You
raise another,
continue to be abused.
yeah,
Right?
you raise another generation of young ones who've seen
So
this
what
pattern.
am I supposed to do? Why won't this problem go away? Because we don't want it to. It's that simple. If we did, we would have laws in place that work. We would have affordable housing where they really are affordable. We would have transitional homes to help women to move from being in an abusive relationship to going to a house of their own. The most important item that a survivor of domestic violence can have are keys to her own place that's safe, furnished, has food in it, and her children are safe. Nobody wants to live in a shelter. I was in a shelter for 8 months. That ain't a place that anybody want to live. That shouldn't be the go-to for victims of domestic violence.
Yeah, you need
They'll only
quiet.
give you a month. Some are a month, some are 3 months. Very few are 1 to 2 years. Very few. I'm not saying there are no resources for survivors. I'm saying there's not enough. So few. And may not even be one in your state.
It's
You may have
mind-blowing.
to be moved to another state in order for you to be safe and start over. I received an email years ago from a survivor of domestic violence. I call her a survivor. And she explained to me that she was in the Underground Railroad for victims of domestic violence. Isn't that something? An Underground Railroad for victims of domestic violence who are trying to protect their children from being molested or given over to a father that will hurt them. She had to change her name. She had to get up, just like if you in protective custody, where they have to move you away to put you in a whole new area with a whole new identity. That's what she had to do. She said she saw me on the documentary and decided to email me for help. And I said, well, how can I help you? She said, all I ask is that you remind people that we are here. And as soon as we finish this conversation, I have to delete this email and never contact you again.
Wow.
Just to let people know that we are here. That's how you can help us. There's an Underground Railroad for victims of domestic violence and their children.
And that's not being covered by any media outlet.
It's nobody. It's nobody.
So these are all just women and children, and
Just
possibly a
out
few
there
fathers
somewhere
too who've
with
taken their
with
kids.
a whole new identity so that they will not be killed by their abuser.
Why don't they call the ACLU,
What does that mean?
the American
There's
Civil
nothing
Liberty?
going to happen. If you could call them, they would be in the forefront of domestic violence. They're not. When have you heard anybody reporting to the ACLU for help that are victims of domestic violence? You haven't.
But wouldn't you think that's your basic right, your pursuit of
You would think
happiness?
that. Absolutely. But just because it's your basic right doesn't mean people are going to help you to get it.
But isn't that what they're for? Like, I mean, I think
you're right. That is what they're for. But it doesn't mean you're going to get it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to deal with what's real, right?
And we
can't
can't
sugarcoat stuff. People's lives are in danger.
We can't call the cops though, because I've spoken,
Right.
because they don't have to protect us legally. They don't have to do anything to keep us safe. So you can't call the cops, can't call the ACLU.
Right.
Media ain't gonna help.
You're on your own. You are your best advocate. You are your best attorney. When I was trying to get an attorney, They wanted to charge me $2,500
A
to
retainer?
retain them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have 25 cents. But what I did have was the clerk of court, and that's free. And I had to spend time in the courtroom, in the courthouse, filing my own paperwork so that I could get justice and that I would be able, when they found my children, to have legal custody of them and be able to leave the state without being charged with kidnapping. And I did that. I did my paperwork pro se. When they found my children, I had to fly back to Washington State for court. The judge said, because my paperwork was in perfect order, because I did it pro se, which meant I did it myself, then I will get custody of the children. I was able to leave the state of Washington without being charged with kidnapping, and I did not have to let John know where I was going. That was a law that was passed, and I was the second person in that state to use that law. So you got to be your own attorney. You got to fight for yourself, because no one else will fight for you like you will fight for yourself. You got to learn the law. You do. I had to learn the law. I didn't sign up to learn the law, but I needed to.
Right. You just fell in love
In
and
order
had some
to be
children.
safe, in order to find my children,
Right.
in order to know what I could do and not do, I had to find that information out for myself. I didn't wait for nobody to do it for me. I did it myself because nobody was going to fight for me. People who I thought were my friends who were going to help me, they took John's side. People who I thought knew what was going on would step up to help me against John, they helped him. They have not to this day said, Mildred, we're sorry. We chose the wrong side.
Do you think that's shame? Do you think they just don't want to look into that?
It could be. It could be. But I didn't let it grow grass up under my feet. I just shrugged them off of my feet, and I kept it moving. I didn't look back. They don't have to tell me they're sorry. Doesn't matter. I kept moving because I had 3 children to raise, and I had to raise them alone. So when people were coming to me speaking negativity, you can't do that by yourself and you need to get counseling, I dismissed them from my life. My life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't have negativity around me. You're not living, you haven't walked in my shoes. You don't know all the decisions that I had to make that was not just based upon me, but was based upon my children too. So you telling me what to do and you don't have the experience that I have, I would be foolish to follow your advice. And don't give me advice that if you were in my shoes, you wouldn't take yourself. So you're wasting my time. I gotta go. Personal. It ain't, nothing personal, just business.
Right.
I'm in the business of protecting me and my children. So it's nothing personal. It's just business.
John found out where you were.
Yes, he did. He went to a father's rights group, told them, I kidnapped the children. He did this in Washington State. They did not verify his story. They did a skip trace on me, found me in the D.C. area, and told him. He went to his best friend and said, hey, I found Mildred. She's in D.C. He said, you're not going to hurt her, are you? He didn't say anything. That's when he left Washington State, came around to Nevada, killed that gentleman on the golf course, came around to Baton Rouge and Atlanta, and went up to New Jersey, purchased that car, rigged it so that he could shoot people out of the trunk, came back down to the D.C. area, and the police picked me up on October the 23rd. And they said to me, Miss Muhammad, we're going to name your ex-husband as the sniper. Oh, and by the way, didn't you know you were the target? The theory was he was killing innocent people to cover up my murder so that he could come in as the grieving father and get custody of the children.
What a sick twist.
That is what all of that was about.
Yeah.
The police did not tell the public at that time that I was the target. 18 years later, they are.
Why do you think they held that information so long?
Because you cannot get the death penalty for a case in domestic violence. My issues were not resolved at that trial. They weren't. he wasn't brought up on charges because he kidnapped the children and took them out of the country, which is a federal offense.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't charged with violating a restraining order by having a gun with him, which is a federal offense. But when they caught him, they had nothing to hold him on. The sheriff at the time in Maryland, he went through LexisNexis trying to find something to hold him on. And what did they find? My restraining order. I had a lifetime restraining order. They took that restraining order and they put it in the NCIC because the Tacoma Police Department did not do that, which is why every time they stopped him in this area during the shootings, it didn't come up on their radar because they didn't put that restraining order in the NCIC. That sheriff put it in the NCIC,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what they used to hold him, to bring charges up on him for what he did. So had I not had my restraining order, they would have had to let him go.
Wow. What's deep is that they don't want to hear you in family court when you're telling them your issues with this person you were married to, but they're going to use that to nab him when they need it.
See, here's the thing. Judges don't want victims and survivors coming in there emotional.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start crying, as soon as you start yelling, as soon as you disrespect the court, that's what they call it, they throw you out. They bring up all of these crazy notions of she wouldn't be well with the children. You walk in that courtroom confident, not crying, have your paperwork in order. Even though you're representing yourself, you will win your case. That's what happened to me and two other ladies I was helping at the time, even though I was in the shelter, to get their children back. It's unfortunate, but if you look at the abuser and his attorneys, they're not crying. They're straightforward. They got their paperwork in order. All of that. Judge said, well, why is your client crying? You're disrespecting the court. You know what? Case dismissed because you're just too emotional. That, if you look at it nationwide, because I've looked at it,
Mm-hmm.
that is what's happening. Walk in there and know your stuff. Whenever I had to cry, I had my face straight. When I left out the courtroom, I went in the bathroom and cried.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody saw me sweating. Nobody saw me crying. Nobody. Because I was about trying to get my children back. And I went to court by myself. I didn't have an attorney. I got dressed in a suit, all
Mm-hmm.
of that. That's what they look at.
You're very strong, and it's amazing to have that presence of mind, because a lot of women, you're living in a shelter, perhaps your child is being raped by daddy. Maybe you've lost your job because you can't show up for work on time because you're triggered. Who knows what's going on? Your PTSD is so severe. How the heck do you
Right.
present yourself in that situation, knowing this is your child's life or death?
You have to. You have to. I don't know how I did it, but I knew I had to. I had to prove to the judge that I was capable of raising my children by myself. When I was in the shelter and I was going to counseling, I said to her, I know your agenda, but I have an agenda too. My agenda is that I need to be prepared for when I get my children back.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted me to write letters on what, I don't want to do that. No. Why am I writing letters to children who, if they were here, this is what I'd be thinking? I don't want to do that. That's not helping me. That's hurting me.
Yeah, that sounds like torture.
I need to be prepared for when I get my children back. So take me on that journey, and we're going somewhere. Anything else you got for me to do, I'm not doing that. Help me to be prepared for when I get my children back. Just because you go to a counselor or a therapist or a life coach doesn't mean you put your whole life in somebody else's hands. Have your agenda. What is it that you need to work on? What is it that you need to have clarity about? That's where you start. And you tell them, this is what I want to do. Tell me how we're going to get there. That's how you do that. I have my own agenda. I'm not going to be falling all over the floor crying out of my mind because I'm thinking about the meal I would have made if my children were here with me today. I don't have time for that. I don't know where they out of the country somewhere. I don't know whatever they're eating, that's what they're eating. I have no idea what that is, but I need to be prepared to get them back.
You can't control it, so why spend time involved in that pain?
You're wasting my time.
It's silly.
You're wasting my time.
Were you ever judged by people who were supposed to be helping you with these things for not playing their games?
Absolutely. I had an attorney that told me that it was my fault that my children were taken because I should not have given him visitation. So you are the fool.
Like it was your choice, huh?
Oh, yes, ma'am. It was my fault. All of it was my fault. You didn't know? It was all my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I heard, but see, here's the hardest thing to do is when someone is criticizing you as a victim of domestic violence. We think we have to take that. Right? Even from family. We think that and from friends, we think that we're just supposed to take what they say. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. Because once they cross that line, and you got to have boundaries. What are your boundaries that you allow people to speak to you in that manner? Where does that line come in at? Where they cross that line and you say, you know what, we're done. They had one time with me at that time. I had too much going on in my brain to have to decipher your madness because you're saying something to me that hurt. You hurt me during that time, you got to go. That's how I had to be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just how I had to think. And me thinking about what you said is distracting me from my real mission. Because my real mission is to stay alive to find my children. If you're going to criticize me from doing that, you don't deserve to be in my life.
Mildred, what was it like to get your kids back?
Oh, my God, girl. When police officer Detective McCarthy called me and said, Ms. Muhammad, we found your children, but I had to fly back to Washington State to get them. The first time I saw my son, he was getting out of the car, and I just looked at him. I couldn't even see him. I was crying so much. I was wiping my eyes and said, I can't see you. I can't see you. My daughters were coming down the elevator. Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. They came over to me, and I just hugged them all, and I turned and said, look, that's all fine and good, but we needed to get in the car because he's trying to kill you, and we need to go hide. So get in the car and let's go. Okay. So we get in the car, and they say, Mommy, Daddy was trying to find you. He said he couldn't find you. I say, really? I say, yes, ma'am. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. If your dad wanted me to find you, why didn't he change your name? They just looked at me and sat back.
Uh-huh.
So we got to the YWCA, and I called my mom. I say, Mom, I got him. And she said, I'm so proud of you. And so we had to fly out that night because they were afraid that John was going to find and kill me that night. We drove from Tacoma to Seattle, 45 minutes one way. Security came out to the car. They picked us up from the car, took us to their security office. From there, the pilot called security and told security they were ready to take off, and they escorted us from the plane, from the security office to the plane, and from there we landed in BWI, September 5th, 2001. But the part about getting my children back, once I got them on this side of the world, and we were laughing and talking, and they kind of looked at me strange because they hadn't seen me. Yeah. I was helping them with abandonment issues. Some sense of hopelessness was still there because they were in Antigua. I didn't question them on what they went through. I wanted it to come naturally from them telling me themselves.
Right.
And finally, I just said to each one of them, what can I do to make your life better? They said, Mom, we just need you to spend more time with us. And that's what I did. Each one of them had a day where it was just me and that person, that child. And on Fridays, it was pizza and movie night. So every Friday we had pizza and we had a movie, whether it was on TV or we went to the movies. That was our regimen to get closer together. to bring some type of normalcy with that.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all teary-eyed. I think you're an amazing woman. I've never met you, but I absolutely love you. I think you're one of those
Thank
angels
you.
being made on earth. I think you're just terrific. And I know, speaking of agendas, you've got a new show coming out.
I do. It's called the Mildred Muhammad Show. I'm so excited about it. It starts May 2nd. Wednesdays from 4 to 5 is when it will air live on WBGR Network. But if you go to my website, themildredmuhammadshow.com, you will see the guests that are lined up. You can also be a sponsor, or you can make a financial contribution so that the show can keep going. But I'm so excited about it. And we will be dealing with domestic abuse and violence, suicide, PTSD, child custody, child trauma, entrepreneurship, health, and well-being. So we're going to deal with what's real. That's how I say it. And we're going to break it down all the way down to the root of why these things are happening and why we're not getting the help that we should expect when we're told that these resources are in place.
That sounds like quite a show. I'm excited to see that.
It is.
I'm very excited. I hope you get a lot of sponsors, because what you want to help people achieve is invaluable. It's self-love and it's healing.
Absolutely, because we all have to find a way to be better to ourselves first and then to others. And healing is one of the ways that we help ourselves. Sometimes when we heal, we don't heal all the way, but that's because we don't know the root of the pain that we are experiencing. It's like looking at an onion. And in order to get to the core, which is the core of your pain, you have to go through every layer to understand why the core or the core of your pain is there. And once you understand that, you will never cry over that issue again. When I say never, I mean never. Because now you have a comprehensive knowledge as to why you are hurting, and now you know how to heal it.
Thank you so very much, Mildred Muhammad. You are fantastic, ma'am. You really are amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for this opportunity to laugh and to share part of my story, and just to talk to you. It's been a pleasure. Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Mildred D. Muhammad, please check out her website and her show. I just think the world of her. Thanks for joining me, y'all. Please do join me also at lisalandry.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. You will receive a free audio download. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Ari, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. But don't watch any of the videos, because I say bad words sometimes.